You think the best recipes are still being made today? Think again. African American kitchens once held treasures that time has nearly erased from memory. These dishes fed generations with love and flavors modern cooking cannot replicate. Here are 60 recipes lost in time that were begging to come back. Bourbon pecan pie was the crown jewel of Southern holidays, a dessert that glowed like polished mahogany under candlelight. It started with a flaky crust and a filling of brown sugar, corn syrup, and butter stirred until glossy. Then came the pecans, perfectly arranged in circles like a mosaic before the final secret ingredient, a splash of bourbon. That hint of warmth and smokiness turned sweetness into something deeper, more grown-up, more unforgettable. As it baked, the aroma filled the room with caramel and oak, and when it cooled, the top cracked slightly with each knife stroke. Served with whipped cream, it was indulgent, but never excessive, a reminder that celebration should always taste like a little bit of sin. One bite, and you could understand why no other pie could compete. It carried the heartbeat of the South, sweet, bold, and unapologetic. Each slice was a memory of laughter, of long dinners and glowing firelight. You didn't just eat it, you lingered with it, savoring every second like the holidays themselves. Caramels were the buttery squares that stuck to teeth in the most satisfying way, each piece a study in perfectly cooked sugar and cream. Mothers would combine sugar, corn syrup, butter, and cream in heavy pots, stirring constantly as the mixture darkened from pale gold to rich amber. The temperature had to reach exactly the firm ball stage. Too soft, and the caramels wouldn't hold their shape. Too hard, and they'd crack teeth. Poured into buttered pans and cooled, the caramel was cut into squares and wrapped individually in waxed paper twisted at both ends. The texture was dense yet yielding, requiring serious chewing that released waves of buttery, slightly burnt sugar flavor. Some mothers added vanilla, others a pinch of sea salt before salted caramel became trendy. Children would unwrap piece after piece, the waxy paper accumulating in pockets and between couch cushions. Homemade caramels represented patience and precision, candies that couldn't be rushed but rewarded every minute of careful attention. Baked ham slices with pineapple rings were the simple, budget-conscious way mothers brought a little holiday spirit to an ordinary night. Instead of buying a whole ham, which was far too expensive for many families, they used thin slices that cooked quickly and filled the kitchen with a rich, salty smell. The pineapple rings made everything feel festive, their syrupy sweetness soaking into the ham as it baked. Kids loved how bright and cheerful the dish looked, the glossy fruit sitting right on top like something out of a magazine. Mothers loved how easy it was, just a few ingredients layered on a pan and placed into the oven. When it came out bubbling and golden at the edges, it felt like a celebration even when nothing special was happening. For kids, it tasted like the fancy meals they imagined other families ate, even though theirs was made with thrift and creativity. It was proof that you could turn something inexpensive into something joyful with almost no effort. Rum balls appeared on 1950s cookie platters as the sophisticated treat that children weren't supposed to eat but always sneaked. Crushed vanilla wafers were mixed with cocoa powder, powdered sugar, corn syrup, chopped nuts, and rum until the mixture held together. No baking required. The balls were simply rolled by hand, then coated in powdered sugar or sprinkles. The rum flavor mellowed as balls aged, though fresh ones made children's eyes widen. Housewives made massive batches since the recipe was simple. Children who ate several acted suspiciously giddy afterward. Rum balls represented the slightly scandalous side of 1950s Christmas. Turkey soup made from the picked-over carcass became Friday's meal that somehow tasted better than Thursday's feast. After Thanksgiving dinner, mothers would boil the turkey bones with onions, celery, and carrots, extracting every last bit of flavor and meat from the frame. The resulting broth was rich and golden, filled with shreds of turkey meat picked from the bones and whatever vegetables were still crisp in the refrigerator. Noodles or rice stretched the soup to feed the family for multiple meals, proving that the turkey's value extended far beyond the initial dinner. Children who claimed to be tired of turkey on Thursday would mysteriously find their appetites when the soup appeared on Friday. The soup meant the holiday wasn't quite over, that there was still warmth and comfort to be extracted from what others might have thrown away. This was Depression-era wisdom that families in the 1960s still practiced, understanding that waste was sin. Maple-glazed carrots glistened like jewels beside the turkey, their sweetness cutting through the heaviness of the meal. They were simple, honest, and full of warmth. Just tender carrots simmered in butter, sugar, and real maple syrup until they gleamed. The smell alone felt like home, that perfect mix of caramel and earth that made the air thick with nostalgia. Housewives loved them because they made something ordinary look festive, and children loved them because they tasted like candy but counted as vegetables. Every generation had its version. Some added orange zest or cinnamon, others a splash of vinegar to balance the sweetness. What stayed constant was the feeling. This was care made visible, color and comfort on a crowded plate. They belonged on every table, glowing like little reminders that the best food often comes from the simplest things. Buckeyes were the peanut butter balls dipped in chocolate to resemble Ohio's state nut, with their signature spot of tan peeking through dark coating. Mothers mixed peanut butter with butter, powdered sugar, and sometimes crispy rice cereal until the mixture was firm enough to roll. Each ball was chilled, then skewered with a toothpick and dipped into melted chocolate, leaving the top exposed. The two-tone appearance made Buckeyes instantly recognizable, their name honoring the Buckeye tree whose nuts they resembled. Children loved the combination of smooth peanut butter filling and crisp chocolate shell, often eating them in 2 bites to appreciate each texture separately. The candies were particularly beloved in Midwestern families, where Buckeye trees grew and state pride ran strong. Making Buckeyes became a family assembly line, with children rolling balls while mothers handled the hot chocolate. These candies proved that regional traditions could spread nationwide when the flavor was this good. Baked beans on toast were the sweet and savory treat that 1960s kids loved far more than anyone would expect from something so modest. The beans came from a can, thick and glossy, smelling like brown sugar and slow cooking. Even though they had been made in a factory, mothers heated them in a pot until they bubbled softly, creating a scent that made hungry kids rush into the kitchen. While the beans warmed up, the bread went into the toaster, and that crispy foundation was what made the whole thing feel special. Once the toast popped, mothers would spoon the beans on top until the entire surface was covered, letting the sauce drip over the sides. Kids dug in immediately, often burning their tongues because they were too impatient to wait. The contrast of crunchy toast and soft beans made every bite feel exciting, and the sweetness in the sauce made it taste almost like a dessert pretending to be dinner. It was cheap, quick, and undeniably comforting. Mothers relied on it during tight weeks when money was short and time was even shorter. Kids begged for it not because it was fancy, but because it was dependable, delicious, and somehow always tasted better at night when the whole house felt quiet. It was one of those meals that did not try to impress anyone, and yet it impressed kids every single time. Mincemeat pie carried centuries of tradition into the 1950s Christmas celebrations, its dense filling of dried fruits and spices mystifying children who couldn't quite identify what they were eating. Housewives either made mincemeat from scratch, simmering apples, raisins, currants, and suet with brown sugar and brandy, or opened jars from the grocery store. The mixture was spooned into double-crusted pies, the tops vented with decorative slits shaped like stars and holly leaves. Baking transformed the filling into something jammy and intensely flavored, the spices melding with fruit into mysterious sweetness. Children either loved or hated mincemeat pie, but it appeared on holiday tables regardless because tradition demanded it. Older relatives would reminisce about mincemeat made with actual meat, though most 1950s versions had gone meatless. The pie kept well and actually improved over days as flavors deepened. Mincemeat represented the kind of old-fashioned Christmas that housewives worked to preserve. Biscuits made from biscuit mix became the bread that required zero skill but delivered maximum comfort. A box of biscuit for 49 cents could make dozens of biscuits following the simple recipe printed on the side. The mix was stirred with milk until just combined, dropped by spoonfuls onto baking sheets, then baked until golden brown with flaky layers. These weren't fancy buttermilk biscuits requiring technique and cold butter, but they were reliable, fast, and genuinely tasty. Children would split them open while steaming hot, stuffing them with butter and honey, or using them to soak up every drop of gravy left on their plates. Mothers appreciated how the mix eliminated the possibility of failure, ensuring that even stressed, distracted holiday cooks could produce decent bread. The biscuits represented modernity and convenience that freed women from baking anxiety, allowing them to focus energy on dishes that actually required skill and attention to detail for success. Turkey tetrazzini was the delicious answer to every leftover dilemma. It turned scraps of roasted turkey into a creamy, elegant casserole that looked far fancier than it really was. The dish began with spaghetti or egg noodles layered in a sauce of cream, mushrooms, and sherry, baked until bubbly and golden on top. Housewives of the 1950s swore by it, calling it the perfect mix of thrift and style. It was warm, indulgent, and impossible not to love. The noodles soaked up every drop of flavor, transforming ordinary leftovers into something you could proudly serve again. Children barely noticed it was yesterday's turkey, and adults appreciated that no food ever went to waste. It was a meal born of practicality but remembered for its comfort, a testament to how resourcefulness could create luxury in a single pan. Canned spaghetti and meatballs was the simple, straight-from-the-can miracle that 1960s kids thought tasted like restaurant food. Mothers bought it because it was cheap, fast, and required nothing but heating. The noodles were soft, the tiny meatballs were tender, and the sweet tomato sauce felt comforting and familiar. Kids always rushed in as soon as the can opener clicked, knowing exactly what smell would fill the kitchen next. It was messy, fun, and easy to eat, the kind of dinner kids slurped instead of politely ate. Mothers relied on it for long days and tight budgets, and kids loved it because it felt like a treat. It tasted like late dinners after playing outside and simple joy without explanation. Canned spaghetti and meatballs were cheap comfort disguised as something special. Mint peas with butter were the bright green accent that added freshness to plates heavy with brown meats and beige starches. Frozen peas were cooked briefly, then tossed with butter and mint that transformed them from ordinary vegetable to something almost sophisticated. The mint provided unexpected brightness, its cool flavor cutting through rich gravies and heavy casseroles. The peas remained vibrant green, their color adding visual appeal to plates that desperately needed something fresh. Children who normally avoided vegetables often accepted mint peas, the familiar sweetness enhanced rather than masked by the herb. Some cooks added cream or lemon, though purists insisted butter and mint were sufficient. The dish required almost no effort, a few minutes of cooking and tossing, yet contributed significantly to the overall meal. Mint peas with butter represented the simple wisdom that sometimes vegetables need only gentle treatment to shine alongside more elaborate preparations. Mashed potatoes stretched with milk and margarine fed entire extended families from a single 5-pound bag costing 39 cents. The potatoes were peeled, boiled until tender, then mashed with whatever dairy was available, usually cheap margarine and reconstituted powdered milk that cost almost nothing. Mothers whipped the potatoes with electric beaters, adding extra milk to increase volume until the bowl looked like it could feed a small army. The result was fluffy and mild, the perfect canvas for soaking up giblet gravy and turkey drippings. Children created wells in their potatoes, specifically designed to hold as much gravy as possible without spilling onto the rest of the plate. Some families added cream cheese when someone brought it as a contribution, elevating the dish into something almost luxurious. These weren't gourmet potatoes, but they were reliable, filling, and cheap enough that seconds and thirds were always encouraged throughout the meal. Cranberry mold salad shimmered like a ruby centerpiece on every vintage table, a small miracle of patience and presentation. Before convenience took over, it was a badge of pride to bring a perfectly molded gelatin dish to the holiday feast. Housewives would stir crushed pineapple, chopped nuts, and tart cranberries into hot syrupy gelatin, pour it into patterned molds, and pray it would set just right. Hours later, they would turn it out with a trembling hand, revealing a glistening dome of color that caught the light and made guests gasp. This salad wasn't really about nutrition. It was about beauty, texture, and the art of making ordinary ingredients feel special. Every bite was a mix of sweet fruit, tangy berries, and the faint crunch of pecans. It paired perfectly with roast turkey and salty gravy, cutting through the heaviness with its cool, clean flavor. In those moments, it wasn't just food. It was decoration, memory, and effort all at once. Even today, that jewel-red glow reminds us how much care once went into the smallest dish on the table. Pecan turtles were the candy that looked like their namesake, with pecan legs extending from caramel bodies topped with chocolate shells. Mothers arranged pecans in clusters on waxed paper, then spooned warm caramel over the centers, letting it flow between the nuts. Once the caramel set, each cluster was dipped in or drizzled with melted chocolate, creating the turtle's shell pattern. The combination of textures made turtles irresistible: crunchy pecans, chewy caramel, and smooth chocolate in every bite. Children loved helping arrange the pecan clusters, feeling like they were creating little candy creatures. The turtles required multiple steps and careful timing, as the caramel needed to be cool enough to hold shape, but warm enough to stick to the nuts. These candies were often saved for gift boxes and special occasions, their elaborate appearance making them feel more valuable than simpler confections. Pecan turtles proved that homemade candy could rival anything from expensive chocolate shops. Cornbread and honey was one of those simple comforts that made every 1960s kid feel like they were getting away with something sweet before dinner. Mothers made cornbread from the cheapest ingredients you could find in any pantry: a little flour, a little cornmeal, a little milk, and maybe an egg if the week had been kind. The batter came together quickly, but the moment it hit the oven, the whole house transformed. That warm, buttery smell drifted through every room, telling kids exactly what was coming without a single word being spoken. When the cornbread came out, golden and steaming, it felt like a gift. Mothers sliced it into thick squares, the kind that crumbled just a little at the edges, and handed it out while it was still warm enough to melt anything that touched it. Then came the honey, drizzled or poured, depending on how generous she felt that day. The honey seeped into all the little cracks, turning a humble piece of bread into something rich and sticky and perfect. Kids loved how the sweetness balanced the savory corn flavor, creating a dessert that was not technically a dessert but felt exactly like one. It was cheap, filling, and made from ingredients almost every family always had on hand. Mothers relied on it because it stretched tight grocery budgets without ever feeling like a compromise. Kids begged for it because it tasted like warmth, like comfort, like the kind of simple sweetness that sticks in your memory long after you grow up and realize how much your mother made out of so little cornbread and honey was proof that dessert did not have to be fancy to be unforgettable. Pumpkin pie crowned 1950s. Thanksgiving and Christmas tables with its spiced custard filling and flaky crust that children requested by name. Housewives opened cans of pumpkin puree, a convenience that cost just pennies, and stirred it with eggs, evaporated milk, sugar, and warming spices until silky smooth. Cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and cloves combined into an aroma that announced the holidays had arrived before the first bite. The filling was poured into homemade pie shells and baked until the center barely jiggled and the edges puffed golden. Children waited impatiently for pies to cool, knowing that whipped cream would be dolloped generously on each slice. Some housewives made their own from heavy cream beaten stiff, while others used newfangled aerosol cans that children found entertaining. The pie cost almost nothing to make, yet delivered satisfaction that lingered through the entire holiday season. Pumpkin pie proved that simple ingredients combined with care could create something children genuinely craved. Corn pudding made from canned corn and pantry staples became the unexpected favorite that children requested by name. 2 cans of creamed corn at 18 cents each were mixed with eggs, milk, flour, sugar, and melted margarine, then baked until set like custard with golden brown edges. The pudding was sweet enough to almost count as dessert, but savory enough to belong on the dinner plate, occupying a strange middle ground that made it endlessly appealing. The texture was soft and spoonable, requiring no chewing that might slow down children eager to move on to pie. Some families added crumbled crackers or cornbread on top for crunch, creating layers of texture that made each bite interesting. Mothers loved this dish because it was impossible to mess up and could be assembled hours ahead, reducing stress during the final cooking rush. The sweetness came from the corn itself, meaning very little sugar was needed. Glazed pearl onions in cream sauce brought quiet sophistication to the holiday table. The tiny white onions, peeled one by one, were simmered gently in butter until they turned soft and golden. Then came the cream, thick and rich, stirred slowly until it clung to each onion like silk. This dish wasn't loud or showy. It whispered luxury, the kind found in old cookbooks and elegant dinner tables of the 1940s. The flavor was simple but profound. Sweet onions softened by butter, lifted by a hint of nutmeg or white pepper. It was the kind of recipe that reminded families how beautiful restraint could be. Guests who remembered it often spoke of the texture, the smoothness, the balance, the grace of something that didn't need to prove itself. Served beside turkey or roast beef, it was the quietest dish on the table, but also the one people always went back for. Maple cream candy was the New England specialty that spread across America as families moved and carried recipes with them. Pure maple syrup was boiled to soft ball stage, then cooled and stirred vigorously until it transformed from glossy liquid to opaque, creamy solid. The stirring required patience and arm strength, as the maple crystallized slowly over many minutes of constant motion. Poured into molds or spread in pans and cut into squares, the candy had a texture somewhere between fudge and butter, melting instantly on the tongue. The flavor was pure concentrated maple, intensely sweet with that distinctive woodsy undertone that only real maple syrup provides. Children who grew up with maple cream candy considered it the finest sweet they'd ever tasted, nothing else quite matching its smooth richness. For families with New England roots, these candies connected Christmas to sugaring season and generations of tradition. Maple cream represented regional identity preserved through decades of December candy making. Hamburger hash was the skillet miracle that made every child in the house sprint to the kitchen the moment they smelled it cooking. Mothers made it by combining ground beef, diced potatoes, onions, and whatever seasonings they had on hand, stretching a small amount of meat into a meal that fed everyone without costing much. The potatoes would brown slowly, getting crisp on the edges and soft in the middle, while the onions melted down into something sweet and perfect. The beef sizzled alongside everything, creating this savory blend that filled the entire home with a smell that no hungry kid could resist. It was a one-pan treasure, the kind of meal that made the kitchen feel warm and alive. Kids loved it because every spoonful felt different. Some bites more potato, some more meat, some deliciously heavy on onion. It was the kind of dish you could pile high on a plate and still go back for seconds, even thirds if you were lucky. Mothers liked that it stretched ingredients, saved money, and kept stomachs full for hours. Many families added ketchup, some added gravy, some ate it exactly as it came out of the pan. There was no wrong way to enjoy hamburger hash. It was cozy, hearty, and the definition of comfort food long before that phrase became trendy. Kids begged for it because it tasted like home in the most uncomplicated way possible, like the kind of dinner that made the whole family sit together without any fuss. It was simple, cheap, and unforgettable, which is exactly why it became a quiet legend in so many 1960s homes. Frozen fruit salad was the jewel of holiday buffets, its pastel sweetness providing cool contrast to hot, savory dishes crowding Christmas tables. Cream cheese was whipped with mayonnaise until smooth, then folded together with whipped cream, canned fruit cocktail, maraschino cherries, and miniature marshmallows. Some versions added crushed pineapple or mandarin oranges for extra fruit presence. The mixture was poured into loaf pans and frozen solid, then sliced into pink-tinged rounds that held their shape beautifully on lettuce-lined platters. The texture was unlike anything else on the table. Frozen yet creamy, sweet yet tangy from the cream cheese base. Children adored it, begging for extra slices, while adults appreciated how it could be made weeks in advance. The salad straddled categories, appearing sometimes with sides and sometimes with desserts. Frozen fruit salad represented the 1970s love of make-ahead entertaining, proving that planning could produce something genuinely delightful. Pickled beets from a jar added bright color and vinegary tang to plates dominated by brown gravy and beige foods. A 39-cent jar of sliced pickled beets provided enough servings for an entire table, requiring absolutely no preparation beyond opening the jar and arranging slices on a plate. Children either loved them intensely or refused to let them touch anything else on their plates, creating clear family divisions. Mothers appreciated how the beets added vitamins and color without requiring any cooking time or attention during the busy meal preparation. The vinegar cut through richness of turkey and gravy, providing palate-cleansing brightness between bites. Some families drained the beets and mixed them with sliced onions for extra flavor, while others served them straight from the jar. The magenta juice would inevitably stain everything it touched, creating pink pools on plates that mixed alarmingly with gravy, but somehow still tasted good together. Cornbread dressing with sage and giblets was the dish that made the house smell like Thanksgiving long before the turkey ever came out of the oven. The sound of cornbread crumbling between your fingers, the hiss of melted butter in a cast-iron skillet, and the rich perfume of onions and celery browning on the stove told everyone that the holiday had truly arrived. Made from scratch, this recipe was more than food. It was an act of devotion passed down through the generations. Families would bake cornbread days in advance, letting it dry just enough to soak up the broth and spices later. The sage added a sharp, earthy scent, the giblets brought depth, and the turkey stock turned everything tender and moist. It was the soul of every Southern table, a dish that tied together memory, labor, and love. No boxed mix could ever come close to the comfort of spooning out that first steaming portion. Every bite carried the quiet pride of homemade effort, the warmth of kitchens where time slowed down and stories lived in every taste. It was the kind of food that made silence fall over the table, the good kind, when everyone is too content to talk. Chocolate fudge was the rich, dense square that anchored every Christmas candy plate, its glossy surface promising sweetness that delivered completely. Mothers combined sugar, cocoa, butter, and milk in heavy saucepans, stirring constantly while the mixture bubbled to the soft ball stage. The critical moment came after removing from heat, beating until it lost its shine and began to set required arm strength and patience. Poured into buttered pans and scored while warm, the fudge cooled into perfect squares that were dense, smooth, and intensely chocolatey. Some mothers added walnuts or pecans, while purists kept it plain to showcase the cocoa flavor. The texture separated homemade from store-bought, tender enough to bite through easily yet firm enough to hold its shape. Children would sneak pieces before it fully set, knowing the slightly soft centers were the best part. Chocolate fudge represented the foundation of holiday candy making, the recipe every mother mastered before attempting anything more complicated. Macaroni with butter and cheese powder was one of the most requested comfort meals of the entire decade, a dish that took almost no time to make but somehow lived rent-free in the memories of every child who grew up in the 1960s. It started with a simple pot of boiling water and a box that promised creamy, cheesy goodness without costing very much at all. Those little elbow noodles dropped into the water like tiny soldiers, rising and sinking while kids watched the steam swirl around the kitchen. When the noodles softened and the water got drained, that was when the magic began. A little butter, a little milk, and that iconic packet of cheese powder turned everything bright orange in a way that felt exciting, almost like you were watching color appear right out of thin air. Kids loved stirring it, even if their mothers always had to fix it afterward because kids never quite got the cheese mixed in all the way. But the taste was what mattered. It was salty, creamy, warm, and cozy, like taking a bite out of happiness itself. It stuck to the spoon in a way that promised you would not be hungry again anytime soon. Mothers served it on busy nights, lazy afternoons, weekends, and days when the weather looked gloomy and everyone needed something cheerful. It was cheap, filling, and dependable, the kind of meal that felt like a little celebration even when there was no reason to celebrate. Kids begged for it constantly, probably more than any other meal because it tasted like childhood in its simplest form. No pretension, no fuss, just pure comfort that came from a box and made the whole day feel better. Sale punch steamed in slow cookers and large pots at 1950s Christmas gatherings, filling rooms with the scent of warm cider and holiday spices. Housewives combined apple cider with orange juice, then simmered the mixture with cinnamon sticks, whole cloves, and allspice until flavors melded into something greater than their parts. Orange slices floated on top like edible decorations, and warm amber liquid was ladled into cups that guests wrapped cold hands around. Children received smaller portions of the non-alcoholic version, though adults often fortified theirs with rum for extra warmth. The punch kept warm for hours, meaning housewives could prepare it before guests arrived and let it tend itself. Ingredients were cheap. Cider came inexpensively in gallon jugs, and whole spices lasted through multiple batches. The drink made homes smell like Christmas itself, greeting guests before they removed their coats. Wassail represented hospitality in liquid form, warming bodies and spirits throughout the coldest season. Pumpkin pie, made from a 29-cent can of Libby's pumpkin filling, became the dessert that defined Thanksgiving for an entire generation of children. The filling was mixed with evaporated milk, eggs, sugar, and pumpkin pie spice, then poured into a store-bought pie crust and baked until set. The result was smooth, spiced, and sweet, with that distinctive canned pumpkin flavor that everyone recognized as the taste of the holiday. Mothers could make 2 pies from a single can when they rolled the crust thin and didn't overfill, stretching dessert to feed a crowd. Children would fight over who got the slice with the most whipped topping, which was usually Cool Whip from a tub rather than fresh whipped cream. The pie was served barely warm, cut into thin slices that somehow still satisfied despite their size. This wasn't fancy French pastry, but it was the taste of tradition that made Thanksgiving feel complete and familiar year after year. Sweet potato casserole with marshmallow topping was the kind of dish that made even the most disciplined guests sneak seconds. Its orange glow, covered in golden, toasted marshmallows, felt like sunshine baked into a pan. It came from an era when family recipes balanced thrift with imagination, when canned goods were transformed into something worthy of celebration. Housewives of the 1950s perfected the combination of mashed sweet potatoes, brown sugar, and butter, then crowned it with a layer of marshmallows that bubbled and browned under the broiler. It was rich, sweet, and faintly smoky, like dessert disguised as a side dish. Children loved it for the candy-like topping, while adults cherished the way it melted into nostalgia. Every scoop blended the velvety smoothness of the potatoes with the sticky crunch of sugar, a harmony that felt uniquely American. It symbolized comfort in its simplest form, a reminder that joy could be baked right into a casserole dish. It was sweet, soft, and just a little over the top, which was exactly what made it perfect. Peanut brittle shattered into golden shards that caught kitchen light like edible amber, its sweet, salty crunch echoing through holiday gatherings. Mothers boiled sugar, corn syrup, and water to the hard crack stage, then stirred in raw peanuts that toasted right in the molten candy. Butter and baking soda were added at the last moment, the soda creating tiny air bubbles that gave brittle its characteristic texture. The mixture was poured onto greased baking sheets and stretched thin while still pliable, requiring heat-resistant hands and quick movements. Once cooled, it was broken into irregular pieces ranging from paper-thin edges to thick, nut-studded centers. The combination of caramelized sugar and roasted peanuts created an addictive flavor that children couldn't resist. Tins of homemade peanut brittle were given as gifts to neighbors and teachers, though families kept the biggest pieces for themselves. This candy represented December traditions when mothers spent hours over hot stoves creating treats no store could match. Canned chili over rice was the hearty, bold-flavored meal that made kids feel like they were eating something adventurous, even though it came straight from the cupboard. Mothers relied on it because a single can could stretch far when poured over a pot of plain rice. The chili's warmth soaked into every grain, turning a bland base into something rich and filling. Kids loved the mix of textures: the soft rice, the thick chili, the little bits of meat that felt like treasure. The smell alone made the house feel lively, like something exciting was happening at the dinner table. It was cheap, fast, and guaranteed to keep everyone full. Mothers made it on nights when they needed something dependable, and kids begged for it because it tasted bigger and bolder than most budget meals. It was simple food that felt like a treat, the kind of dish families quietly relied on more than they realized. Grits with cheese and fried eggs became Thanksgiving morning fuel that prepared families for hours of cooking and welcoming relatives. The grits were cooked low and slow, stirred patiently until creamy, then mixed with sharp cheddar that melted into golden richness. Eggs fried in bacon grease created crispy edges and runny yolks that mixed with the grits like natural gravy. This combination delivered protein and energy in portions generous enough to last through morning chaos. In Black Southern households, grits weren't just breakfast, but foundation food connecting families to their agricultural roots. Grandmothers seasoned them with salt, pepper, and butter. The cheese added calcium while eggs provided protein when meat was saved for dinner. Children scraped their bowls clean. Teenagers ate double portions before being sent on errands. Grits with cheese and fried eggs represented practical wisdom of feeding families well on limited budgets. Mincemeat pie, made from a jar of filling, represented tradition and thrift combined in 9-inch pastry. A jar of prepared mincemeat for 59 cents was poured into a pie crust and baked until bubbling, creating a dense, spiced dessert that tasted like concentrated Christmas. The filling was dark and mysterious, packed with dried fruits, spices, and sometimes a hint of brandy that made it feel sophisticated and adult. Children often rejected mincemeat pie entirely, leaving more for grown-ups who remembered it from their own childhoods. The pie kept well and actually improved after a day or two, making it perfect for Thanksgiving when desserts needed to be prepared ahead. Some families served it with hard sauce or vanilla ice cream, but most ate it plain with coffee after the dishes were cleared. This wasn't the most popular pie on the table, but its presence signaled tradition and connection to previous generations who had made these same choices. Pumpkin chiffon pie felt like the future when it first appeared on mid-century tables, light, silky, and proudly modern. It was a daring twist on the dense custard pies that came before it, whipped into something airy and elegant with the help of gelatin and meringue. Housewives loved it because it looked fancy but cost little, and it became the hallmark of an age that prized efficiency without sacrificing beauty. The filling was a dreamy orange cloud, spiced with cinnamon and clove, poured into a buttery crust that crackled with every bite. Served cold, it carried all the flavors of autumn but none of the heaviness. It was a pie that made guests marvel and grandmothers nod approvingly. It took skill, timing, and a little courage to pull off perfectly. One wrong whisk or chill and it would collapse. But when it worked, it was unforgettable. It wasn't just dessert. It was proof that tradition could evolve, that even the oldest recipes had room for a little imagination. Hard candy drops were the jewel-toned confections that mothers poured into molds or dropped onto marble slabs, each piece catching light like stained glass. Sugar, corn syrup, and water were boiled to the hard crack stage, then quickly mixed with food coloring and flavoring before being poured into shapes. The process required speed and precision. Hard candy set within minutes and couldn't be reworked once it cooled. Lemon drops glowed yellow, cinnamon discs burned red, and mint rounds sparkled green, creating a rainbow on every candy dish. Children loved sucking on these candies, feeling them slowly dissolve and release intense bursts of flavor. Some mothers used antique molds passed down through generations, pressing candy into shapes of Christmas trees, bells, and stars. The candies kept for weeks in tins, making them perfect for gift-giving and stocking stuffers. Hard candy drops required mastering high-temperature sugar work, a skill that separated casual candy makers from serious Christmas confectioners. Sloppy Joes on toasted buns were the messy, lovable dinners that 1960s kids acted like they could not live without. The name itself promised a meal where neatness did not matter. Mothers loved that 1 pound of meat could stretch far when mixed with sauce and seasonings. The skillet popped as the beef cooked, and when the sauce hit the pan, the whole house filled with that warm, tangy smell everyone recognized. The buns were lightly toasted to keep them from falling apart. Not that it ever worked. The sandwich dripped, slipped, and made a mess, and that was the entire point. Every bite was comforting and familiar, the kind of food that made a plain evening feel like something to look forward to. Mothers liked how fast and cheap it was, and kids begged for it because it felt like dinner made just for them. Sloppy Joes were childhood joy disguised as dinner. Glorified rice transformed leftover grain into a festive dessert salad that children begged for and adults secretly loved just as much. Cold-cooked rice was folded with crushed pineapple, miniature marshmallows, maraschino cherries, and whipped cream until it became unrecognizable from its humble origins. Some versions added chopped nuts or coconut for texture, while others kept the base simple. The dish needed thorough chilling, allowing flavors to meld and rice to soften in the creamy mixture. Served in crystal bowls, glorified rice looked almost bridal, pale and dotted with bright cherry red. The sweetness made it controversial as a side dish, yet families insisted it belonged alongside turkey and gravy. This was thrift elevated to celebration, using rice that might otherwise go to waste. Mothers passed down specific ratios, each family believing their version superior. Glorified rice represented an era when creativity with basics was celebrated, when making something from nothing was its own form of kitchen magic. Stuffing made from day-old bread transformed what bakeries sold for pennies into the most fought-over dish on the table. Mothers saved bread heels and stale slices throughout November, letting them dry on counters until ready to be cubed and baked into something magnificent. The bread was torn into chunks, mixed with sautéed onions and celery cooked in butter, seasoned with sage and thyme, then moistened with turkey broth until saturated with flavor. Some families added chopped apples for sweetness, while others mixed in sausage when budget allowed extra protein. The stuffing was packed into the turkey cavity where it soaked up drippings or baked separately when the bird was too small. Children hovered near the stove, waiting for edges to get crispy and golden, sneaking pieces before dinner was served. This turned waste into treasure, proving cheapest ingredients could become most beloved when treated with care and seasoning. Oyster stuffing was for families who lived close enough to the coast to taste the sea at their holiday tables. It was a recipe born from both abundance and ingenuity, a way to stretch precious oysters with bread, butter, and herbs while still making something rich enough for celebration. The briny flavor mingled with the crisp edges of toasted breadcrumbs, creating a savory perfume that filled every corner of the kitchen. Some added celery and onions for balance, others poured in a touch of cream or sherry to soften the edges. What came out of the oven was golden and fragrant, a perfect marriage of land and sea. It felt luxurious yet humble, something you could serve proudly without ever wasting a thing. Older cooks swore by using fresh oysters, never canned, and families gathered early just to help shuck them, laughing as they worked. Each bite was a little taste of home for anyone who grew up near the water, a reminder of waves, salt air, and tradition that never needed a reason to come back. Pralines were the creamy southern confection that melted on the tongue, their caramelized sugar and toasted pecans creating pure holiday indulgence. Mothers cooked sugar, butter, and cream until the mixture reached soft ball stage, then beat in vanilla and whole pecan halves until the candy turned opaque. Spooned quickly onto waxed paper, each praline spread into a flat disc with pecans arranged across its surface. The texture was what made pralines special. Not quite fudge, not quite caramel, but something uniquely smooth that dissolved into buttery sweetness. Families with southern roots considered pralines essential to Christmas, passing recipes through generations. Children learned to recognize the specific shade of amber that meant the candy was ready, watching mothers work with chemist precision. The smell of cooking pralines filled houses with warmth that captured the entire holiday season. Pralines couldn't be hurried, requiring skill that mothers perfected over years of Christmas candy making. Butterscotch candy bubbled in heavy pots across 1950s kitchens, its amber sweetness filling houses with an aroma that drew children like magnets. Brown sugar, butter, and corn syrup were cooked until a candy thermometer reached the hard crack stage. The molten candy was poured onto buttered sheets, then scored into squares before hardening. The finished candies shattered between teeth, releasing waves of buttery caramel flavor. Some housewives wrapped pieces in wax paper, while others broke the slab into irregular shards. Children loved watching the transformation from bubbling liquid to golden solid. Butterscotch cost pennies but tasted expensive, proving that skill mattered more than spending. Dinner mints from a bag became the tiny candy that signaled the meal's transition from dinner to dessert. A bag of pastel buttermints for 39 cents was poured into small glass dishes and placed around the table after dinner plates were cleared. The mints melted on the tongue, providing a moment of sweetness and freshness that cleansed palates before pie was served. Children would sneak handfuls when adults weren't looking, stuffing pockets with the soft candies that would later be discovered as sticky messes during laundry. The mints represented elegance and sophistication on a budget, making ordinary family dinners feel like restaurant experiences. Adults would take one or two politely, while children calculated how many they could grab without getting caught or scolded. The pastel colors added visual appeal to tables, making everything look coordinated and intentional, even when the meal had been chaotic and stressful. This was economy disguised as luxury. Giblet gravy was the heart of Thanksgiving, poured straight from the pan, rich with patience and the flavor of the bird itself. Every home cook knew it by feel, not recipe. How long to stir, how much stock to add, how to chase the right shade of brown. It began with drippings, the golden treasure at the bottom of the roasting pan, where the fat and flavor settled after hours of slow cooking. Into that went the chopped giblets, bits of liver, gizzard, and heart, simmered until tender. A spoonful of flour thickened it, turning the mixture glossy and smooth. The aroma alone could draw people into the kitchen, hovering with empty plates in hand. For many, it was the truest measure of a cook's skill. Anyone could roast a turkey, but making perfect giblet gravy took touch and instinct. It wasn't pretty, but it was soulful, earthy, and irreplaceable. When poured over mashed potatoes or dressing, it brought every dish together, binding the feast with its deep, savory magic. Peppermint bark layered dark and white chocolate with crushed candy canes into a festive treat that looked as beautiful as it tasted. Mothers would melt semi-sweet chocolate and spread it thin on waxed paper, letting it set until firm before adding a layer of white chocolate on top. While the white chocolate was still soft, crushed peppermint candy canes were pressed into the surface, their red and white stripes creating holiday color against the creamy background. Once fully hardened, the bark was broken into irregular shards that showed off the distinct layers. Each bite delivered the snap of tempered chocolate followed by cool peppermint that lingered on the tongue. Children loved the contrast of textures and flavors, the way the candy cane pieces crunched against smooth chocolate. Making bark required patience for proper tempering, but rewarded cooks with a candy that looked professional and tasted even better. It became a staple of cookie exchanges and holiday gift boxes, a treat that said Christmas without any words needed. Jiffy corn muffins with jelly were warm, golden treats that made ordinary mornings feel like something sweeter. Mothers loved how quick the mix was, needing only a splash of milk or water before going into the oven. As they baked, the house filled with a sweet, buttery smell that made kids hover until the timer rang. Split open while still steaming, each muffin melted the grape jelly spread across its soft center. Every bite was sweet, warm, and comforting, the kind of food that felt like a hug. Kids loved their small size and always reached for more than one. Mothers appreciated how affordable they were and how long a batch lasted. Kids begged for them because they tasted like childhood in its simplest, happiest form. They were a small luxury in a decade full of stretched budgets. Leftover ham biscuits made from holiday ham scraps became Thanksgiving morning sandwiches that children grabbed before running outside. Small pieces of ham left from trimming the holiday roast were diced and stuffed into split biscuits, sometimes with butter or mustard spread inside. These portable breakfasts could be eaten with one hand, making them perfect for active mornings. The ham provided protein and salt that woke up taste buds, while the biscuits offered satisfying bread that filled stomachs. Grandmothers made dozens of biscuits the day before, knowing they could be repurposed throughout the holiday. Children appreciated the convenience and familiar flavors. Adults valued how the scraps that might have been discarded became proper breakfast, proving nothing was too small. Leftover ham biscuits showed the thrift that defined Black Southern cooking, demonstrating how even small scraps deserved respect and could become meals families enjoyed. Lime Jello with cottage cheese became the salad that confused everyone but somehow kept appearing year after year. A package of lime Jello was mixed with cottage cheese and sometimes crushed pineapple, creating a lumpy, jiggly green mass that looked distinctly unappetizing. The combination of sweet gelatin and tangy cottage cheese created flavor confusion that divided families, with some members defending it passionately while others refused to let it touch their plates. Mothers who served it claimed it was traditional, passed down from their mothers who had found the recipe in magazines during the 1950s. The salad represented a specific era of American cooking when Jello was considered sophisticated and cottage cheese was diet food, combining them into something that seemed modern and health-conscious. Children universally rejected it, staring in horror at the wobbly green squares with visible cheese curds suspended throughout. This was one tradition that probably should have been forgotten. Ambrosia salad was the taste of sunshine in the middle of winter. It came out of the refrigerator in big glass bowls, shining with oranges, pineapples, coconut, and soft clouds of whipped cream. To mid-century families, it felt like a little vacation from the gray months, a bit of sweetness and color when both were hard to find. Every spoonful carried the joy of canned fruit, the pride of store-bought marshmallows, and the comfort of something cool and creamy after a heavy meal. It wasn't about refinement, it was about happiness. Children would sneak bites before dinner, while grandparents smiled and pretended not to notice. For church suppers, potlucks, or holidays, ambrosia was always welcome because it made people smile. It was the kind of dish that proved joy didn't have to be complicated or expensive. Just fruit, cream, and a little hope that something simple could still feel special. Saltwater taffy was the pull-and-stretch candy that turned December kitchens into family workshops, children and parents working together until arms ached. Mothers would cook sugar, corn syrup, butter, and salt to the hard ball stage, adding food coloring and flavoring before pouring the hot mixture onto greased marble slabs or baking sheets. Once cool enough to handle, the taffy was gathered into ropes and pulled repeatedly, the stretching incorporating air that transformed the candy from dense and dark to light and glossy. Children took turns pulling, their small hands working alongside their mothers until the taffy turned satiny and began to hold its shape. Cut into bite-sized pieces and wrapped in waxed paper, each taffy was chewy, sweet, and impossibly fresh compared to anything from the store. The flavors ranged from peppermint to vanilla to fruit, each batch a different color. Making taffy was as much entertainment as production, a family activity that created memories alongside candy. Egg salad sandwiches were the creamy, slightly tangy meal that kids pretended to be tired of at school but begged for the moment they got home. Mothers made them because eggs were cheap, filling, and easy to turn into something substantial without spending much. The eggs were boiled, chopped, and mixed with mayonnaise, mustard, and simple seasonings, with each family adding their own little twist. Spread thickly on soft white bread, the filling squished gently when kids pressed down for that first bite. The flavor was mild but comforting, cool and creamy in a way that felt special. Mothers loved that it packed well and kept kids full, and kids loved that it felt like a treat disguised as something ordinary. It was fast, cheap, and endlessly satisfying. The quiet hero of 1960s kitchens and a craving that never quite left adulthood behind. Broccoli rice casserole became a 1970s Christmas staple when convenience products merged with home cooking to create something families genuinely craved. Cooks combined cooked rice with chopped broccoli, then folded in cream of mushroom soup and processed cheese spread that melted into golden richness. Some recipes called for sautéed onions and celery, adding layers of flavor beneath the creamy base. The mixture was baked until bubbling around the edges, the top developing golden spots where cheese had caramelized. The texture was comfort itself, creamy rice studded with tender broccoli, every bite coated in savory cheese sauce. Children who refused plain broccoli would eat it gladly when disguised in this casserole, making it a parental victory as much as a side dish. The recipe appeared in community cookbooks across America. Broccoli rice casserole represented an era when processed ingredients were celebrated, when feeding families well meant using every shortcut available. Apple cider bought by the gallon jug became the beverage that made water feel festive and special. A gallon of cider for 79 cents provided drinks for the entire day, served cold before dinner, and heated with cinnamon sticks for evening dessert. The cider tasted like autumn itself, sweet and slightly tangy, with flavors that complemented turkey and pie perfectly. Children could drink unlimited amounts without mothers worrying about sugar the way they did with soda, making it the rare treat that came without restrictions or guilt. Some families added cinnamon sticks and whole cloves when heating it, filling homes with spice scents that made everything smell like celebration. The cider bridged the gap between adult beverages and childhood drinks, sophisticated enough for grown-ups but sweet enough for children. This was economy and festivity combined, turning apple juice into something that felt appropriate for special occasions without requiring champagne budgets or cocktail skills. Corn pudding casserole was the quiet hero of the holiday table, golden and soft in its simple baking dish. It had no frosting or garnish, just a warm sweetness that came from cream, eggs, and corn scraped straight from the cob. This recipe was born in farm kitchens, where nothing went to waste and everything had to stretch. Housewives stirred it together from memory, pouring the silky mixture into cast iron or enamel pans and sliding it into wood-fired ovens until it trembled just right in the center. The edges browned, the smell deepened, and everyone knew dinner was almost ready. It tasted like sunshine and patience, both rare gifts in a busy world. Served hot or cold, it brought balance to the feast, a reminder that even humble ingredients could create something deeply comforting. Corn pudding casserole didn't need to dazzle, it just needed to be there, holding the meal together like family itself. Hot dogs and pork and beans were the kind of meal that felt special even though everything came from a can or a simple package. Mothers liked it because it was easy, and kids loved that sweet and salty mix that felt like comfort in a bowl. She sliced the hot dogs, let them sizzle in a skillet, then poured the thick beans over the top so everything could bubble together. The smell alone made kids hover around the stove waiting for their plates. It was cheap, filling, and needed nothing but a fork or a piece of toast to feel complete. Some families added onions, others kept it plain, but every family agreed it tasted like the best kind of simplicity. It reminded kids of slow evenings, a little extra fun, and moments when something ordinary felt exciting. Hot dogs and pork and beans were joyful, easy, and exactly what childhood dinners were supposed to feel like. Thumbprint cookies appeared on 1950s Christmas platters as buttery rounds with jewel-toned centers that children found irresistible. The dough was simple: butter, sugar, flour, and egg yolks, rolled into balls and pressed with thumbs to create wells that held bright dollops of jam. Strawberry and raspberry were favorites, their red color festive against the golden cookies. Some housewives rolled the balls in chopped nuts before pressing, adding crunch and visual appeal. Children loved helping press the indentations, their small thumbs perfect for the task. After baking, the jam centers glistened like stained glass, almost too pretty to eat. The cookies required patience. The jam needed to set before stacking, but the wait was worthwhile. Ingredients cost almost nothing since most homes kept jam in the pantry anyway. Thumbprint cookies proved that simple techniques and humble ingredients could create something that looked bakery professional. Kids counted how many of each jam flavor they'd eaten, comparing favorites. Buttered noodles made from a 25-cent package of egg noodles became the side dish that picky children could actually eat. The noodles were boiled until tender, drained, then tossed with margarine and a sprinkle of salt and pepper, creating something mild enough not to offend sensitive palates. This wasn't fancy pasta, but it absorbed gravy beautifully and provided carbohydrates that kept children full when they refused to eat vegetables. Mothers appreciated how quickly noodles cooked and how they never caused dinner table battles like green beans or Brussels sprouts. Some families added a bit of chicken broth to the butter for extra flavor, while others kept them completely plain. The noodles were reliable, cheap, and universally acceptable, making them essential insurance against picky eater meltdowns. Children would pile their plates high with buttered noodles, creating safe bases for small amounts of turkey and gravy that they could control and manage without adult intervention. Scalloped oysters were a taste of luxury from a time when luxury was rare. The recipe was straightforward but demanded care. Fresh oysters layered with cream, butter, and cracker crumbs, baked until the edges bubbled and browned. The smell alone was enough to draw a crowd to the oven door. It was a dish people made to mark something special, a celebration of the year's blessings or the rare chance to splurge. The salty bite of the oysters melted into the cream, and the toasted crumbs gave it a gentle crunch that lingered long after each bite. Families who could afford it shared with neighbors who couldn't, because Thanksgiving was about more than food. It was about grace. Every spoonful carried both indulgence and gratitude, the taste of tradition dressed up for one perfect day. Letting the turkey rest properly was one of those steps Grandma took seriously, even when everyone else was starving. When the turkey came out golden and steaming, hands always reached for the carving knife, but she gently stopped them every time. She covered the bird loosely and let it sit so the juices could settle back into the meat. She never rushed this part. While it rested, she checked the rolls, stirred the gravy, or finished a side dish. The kitchen moved around her, but she stayed focused on that pause she believed in so deeply. And when she finally carved the turkey, the slices came out tender and juicy, proving her point without a word. Even the hungriest person admitted the wait was worth it. That quiet patience reflected how she treated the whole holiday. She knew rushing never made anything better. Oven-baked drumsticks were the budget-friendly superstar of the 1960s dinner table, turning ordinary nights into something that felt special. Drumsticks were the cheapest chicken cut, stretching into enough portions for the whole family without costing much. Mothers seasoned them with whatever was available and let the oven do the work as the skin crisped and the meat stayed juicy. The rich, savory smell drifted through the house, calling kids into the kitchen long before dinner was ready. Kids loved eating them with their hands, feeling like the whole drumstick belonged just to them. Mothers loved how easy and foolproof the recipe was. When the tray came out, golden and tempting, kids devoured them with excitement. Simple but joyful, oven-baked drumsticks proved that the best meals did not need to be fancy to feel like a feast. Baked, leftover sweet potato pie filling spread on toast became Thanksgiving morning sweetness that used every bit of holiday preparation. When grandmothers made sweet potato pies for dinner, extra filling often remained in the mixing bowl. Rather than waste it, the spiced sweet potato mixture was spread thick on toasted bread, creating breakfast that tasted like dessert. The filling contained eggs, milk, sugar, and warm spices like cinnamon and nutmeg, making it nutritious as well as delicious. Children loved this unexpected treat, feeling like they were getting away with eating pie for breakfast. Adults enjoyed the creative repurposing, appreciating how nothing was wasted. The sweet potatoes provided vitamins and fiber while the toast offered substance and texture. This breakfast cost nothing extra since it used ingredients already prepared for the day's feast. Leftover sweet potato pie filling on toast represented the ultimate waste-not wisdom, showing how grandmothers viewed every ingredient as precious. Dinner rolls from frozen dough made Thanksgiving tables look abundant while costing less than homemade versions. A package of frozen Rhodes rolls for 49 cents contained 24 pieces of dough that rose while families were at church or preparing other dishes. The rolls were placed in greased pans, covered with towels, and left to proof until doubled in size, filling kitchens with yeasty smell of fresh bread. When baked, they turned golden with soft, pillowy interiors that pulled apart in steaming sections. Children slathered them with margarine while still too hot to touch, burning fingers but unable to wait for butter to melt. These rolls made tables look generous and festive, like families had spent hours baking when the truth was far simpler and cheaper. Mothers could focus energy on turkey and sides while rolls handled themselves with minimal supervision, soaking up gravy and wiping plates clean. Pumpkin bread with golden raisins was the gift you baked when words weren't enough. It came out of the oven with a deep amber color, the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg spilling into every room. The batter was rich with pureed pumpkin and brown sugar, giving it a moist, tender crumb that stayed soft for days. The golden raisins added little pockets of sweetness, glimmering like treasures in every slice. This was the kind of bread that friends wrapped in foil and handed over fences, the kind that said, "Thinking of you better than any card." It was simple, but it carried warmth in every bite, a reminder that generosity was its own tradition. Served with cream cheese or just warm from the pan, it was autumn comfort perfected. Even weeks later, the memory of that scent could fill a kitchen with calm. It was a recipe that belonged to every season, but somehow felt right only when leaves began to fall. For those who baked it, it wasn't just bread. It was a way of saying love without needing to speak at all. English toffee was the shatteringly crisp candy that coated kitchens in butter-scented clouds every time mothers made a batch. Sugar and butter were cooked together until deeply caramelized, then poured thin onto baking sheets and topped with melted chocolate and crushed almonds while still warm. The toffee had to reach exactly the right temperature. Too low and it stayed chewy, too high and it turned bitter. Once cooled, it was broken into irregular shards that ranged from paper-thin edges to thick, nutty centers. The texture was what made English toffee special, shattering between teeth before melting into buttery sweetness on the tongue. Children loved the combination of crispy toffee, smooth chocolate, and crunchy almonds in every bite. These candies were often packaged in decorative tins for gift-giving, their homemade quality impressing recipients who knew how difficult proper toffee could be. English toffee represented the pinnacle of sugar cooking skill in many Christmas candy traditions. Fried bologna sandwiches were the crown jewel of cheap meals that somehow tasted like pure magic to a 1960s kid. You would hear that sizzle hit the pan and instantly know something good was coming. Mothers did not need fancy cuts of meat to keep kids happy, just a thin slice of bologna and a hot skillet. The edges curled as it cooked, forming that little bowl shape every kid waited for. Some wanted it soft, others begged for it crisp, but everyone agreed it tasted perfect. Then came the soft white bread, the kind that practically melted when you bit into it. Maybe you added mustard, maybe not, but the flavor never needed help. It was salty, warm, and comforting in a way that felt bigger than the ingredients. Mothers loved it because it took almost no time, and kids loved it because it never once felt cheap. Fried bologna sandwiches were childhood on a plate, simple and perfect every single time. Fruitcake endured as the 1950s Christmas tradition that everyone joked about but secretly anticipated each December. Dense loaves studded with candied cherries, citron, pineapple, and nuts were baked weeks ahead and wrapped in cheesecloth soaked with brandy or rum to age properly. Housewives mixed massive batches of batter, folding in more fruit and nuts than flour until the mixture could barely hold together. The cakes baked slowly at low temperatures, emerging dark and heavy with the weight of celebration. Children picked out the bright red and green cherries, leaving craters and slices that adults pretended not to notice. Some families kept fruitcakes from year to year, adding more spirits until the cakes became practically immortal. The ingredients cost real money. Candied fruit and nuts were not cheap, but one cake could serve dozens of guests throughout the season. Fruitcake represented commitment to tradition, the kind of elaborate preparation that defined Christmas as different from ordinary time. Candied sweet potatoes made from a single can became the dish children fought over at every table. A 29-cent can of sweet potatoes was sliced into rounds, layered in butter, then covered with brown sugar and cinnamon before baking until edges caramelized into sticky sweetness. Families stretched one can to feed 8 by slicing thin and arranging carefully. The result tasted like dessert, but counted as vegetables, satisfying mothers who wanted nutrition and children who craved sugar. Some added mini marshmallows on top during the last minutes, creating a golden crust that crackled when you broke through with your fork. The dish was so popular that seconds disappeared before first servings reached everyone. Sweet potatoes were cheaper than white potatoes and provided vitamins that Depression-era mothers remembered as essential. This was the taste of celebration that made Thanksgiving special even when money was desperately tight. Old-fashioned sausage and apple stuffing, was the dish that made every corner of the house smell like home. It started with crumbled sausage sizzling in a cast-iron skillet, filling the air with a savory richness that clung to your clothes in the best possible way. Chopped onions and celery joined the pan, followed by cubes of bread that soaked up all that flavor. But it was the apples that made this stuffing unforgettable, their soft sweetness melting into the salty sausage like a secret ingredient only grandmothers knew about. It was both hearty and delicate, the kind of food that balanced comfort with nostalgia. Every bite tasted like the holiday itself, warm, fragrant, and alive with memory. The aroma alone could bring people to the kitchen, sneaking bites before dinner was called. This was the kind of recipe that didn't need measuring cups or timers, only instinct and care. Sausage and apple stuffing didn't just fill stomachs, it filled hearts, reminding families that the best traditions are the ones too good to change. Candied orange peel transformed citrus scraps into jewel-like confections that looked almost too pretty to eat but tasted too good to resist. Mothers sliced orange peels into strips, boiled them repeatedly to remove bitterness, then simmered them in sugar syrup until translucent. Drained and tossed in granulated sugar, the peels sparkled like amber gems, their texture chewy and intensely flavored. Some mothers dipped theirs in dark chocolate, the bitter cocoa complementing sweet citrus perfectly. The candy took days to make properly, requiring multiple blanching sessions, but results were unlike anything from stores. Children were often surprised by how much they loved candied peel, expecting bitterness and finding instead concentrated orange sunshine. Arranged on plates alongside other candies, the peels added color and sophistication that elevated the entire spread. This was the candy that showed a mother's dedication, her willingness to transform what others discarded into something beautiful. Hot dog boats with melted cheese were the kind of fun, silly, absolutely irresistible meal that made every child feel like dinner had suddenly become a party. Mothers made them by slicing hot dogs down the center, filling the opening with a strip of cheese and popping them under the broiler until everything bubbled and browned. The hot dogs curled just enough to cradle the cheese, creating that little boat shape that kids thought was hilarious. The smell hit fast, a mix of smoky hot dog and melting cheese that could pull a kid from any room in the house. Mothers loved them because they were cheap, easy, and guaranteed to make even the pickiest eater happy. Kids loved them because they felt playful, almost like something from a carnival. The cheese would stretch when you took a bite, and sometimes it would drip down the side in a way that made dinner feel like an adventure. Served with a little ketchup or mustard, these boats were a masterpiece of budget cooking that tasted far richer than they really were. Kids begged for them constantly because they made dinner fun, filling, and unforgettable. They were one of those meals that captured exactly what it felt like to grow up in the 1960s. Simple joys, simple ingredients, and memories that last a lifetime. Snowball cookies rolled across 1950s baking sheets as buttery dough balls that emerged from ovens ready to be coated in clouds of powdered sugar. Also called Mexican wedding cookies or Russian tea cakes, these treats required nothing more than butter, flour, powdered sugar, vanilla, and finely chopped pecans or walnuts. Housewives creamed butter until fluffy, added the dry ingredients, then rolled the dough into small balls that baked until just barely golden on the bottom. The magic happened while cookies were still warm. They were rolled in powdered sugar that melted slightly, then rolled again once cooled until they looked like perfect snowballs. Children's fingers and faces turned white from eating them, leaving evidence of how many they'd consumed. The cookies kept for weeks in tins, making them ideal for gift-giving and holiday entertaining. Their melt-in-your-mouth texture and subtle sweetness made them universally beloved. Snowball cookies cost pennies to make but delivered the kind of delicate elegance that impressed guests. Cranberry sauce from a can shaped like a cylinder became the one store-bought item families served with pride instead of shame. A single 19-cent can of Ocean Spray jellied cranberry sauce provided enough tart sweetness for an entire table when sliced into perfect rounds. Children loved how it held its shape from the can, creating ridged slices that wobbled on the plate like something magical. The sweet tart flavor cut through richness of turkey and gravy, providing brightness that homemade versions struggled to match at this price. Mothers didn't apologize for serving it straight from the can, because everyone secretly preferred this version to complicated cranberry relishes costing 3 times as much to make. Some families got fancy by mixing it with chopped apples, but most served those perfect ridged slices exactly as they emerged from the can. This was one of the few convenience foods that working families embraced without guilt. Jell-O Cranberry Relish Ring was a masterpiece of color and patience, gleaming on the table like a ruby crown. In the 1960s, molded salads were the pride of every hostess, proof that effort and elegance could come straight from the refrigerator. Housewives poured hot gelatin over crushed cranberries, pineapple, and orange zest, then carefully chilled it in ring molds overnight. When it was finally unmolded, the dish shimmered like stained glass under the dining room lights. Each slice quivered just enough to catch attention, and its tart, tangy flavor balanced the richness of the rest of the meal. It wasn't just a side dish. It was decoration, conversation, and culinary art all at once. Families passed the serving plate with awe, careful not to break the perfect ring. For many, it symbolized a time when presentation mattered as much as taste, when pride could fit neatly into a single molded circle. Coconut haystacks were the quick confection that mothers could make even on the busiest December days, requiring nothing more than melted chocolate and shredded coconut. Butterscotch or chocolate chips were melted carefully, then stirred with sweetened coconut until every strand was coated. Dropped by spoonfuls onto waxed paper, the haystacks set into rough mounds that looked exactly like their farmyard namesakes. Children could help make these, stirring the mixture and dropping candies, learning basics without hot sugar dangers. The texture combined the snap of set chocolate with the chew of coconut, each bite delivering both crunch and softness. Some mothers added chopped nuts or used white chocolate, while others stuck with the classic their own mothers had made. Haystacks were democratic candy, easy enough for beginners, yet beloved enough that skilled candy makers included them on holiday plates. They disappeared quickly at gatherings, their simplicity making them more rather than less appealing. Crispy fish sticks with ketchup were the oven-baked heroes of weeknight dinners, especially when mothers needed something quick that still felt fun. Kids knew the sound of the frozen sticks hitting the metal tray, stiff and pale before the oven worked its magic. As they baked, the smell grew warm and inviting, and kids would check the window for that golden edge that meant the crunch would be perfect. Mothers loved them because they were cheap, easy, and guaranteed to stop complaints. When the tray came out, kids rushed to the table with their plates ready. The first bite always had that satisfying crunch, followed by soft fish inside. Dip after dip into ketchup made the meal feel playful, like a tiny restaurant experience right at home. Fish sticks tasted like relaxed evenings, simple comfort, and just enough excitement to make dinner special. Kids begged for them because they never felt boring no matter how often they appeared. They were cheap, cheerful, and unforgettable. Fruit cocktail cake was the 1950s dessert that transformed humble canned fruit into a moist, celebration-worthy confection costing almost nothing. Housewives stirred a can of fruit cocktail, juice and all, into basic cake batter made from flour, sugar, eggs, and baking soda. The fruit distributed throughout, creating pockets of sweetness in every slice while the juice kept the crumb tender. Brown sugar and coconut were sometimes sprinkled on top before baking, caramelizing into a crunchy crown. Children loved finding the different fruits in their slices: pale pears, rosy peaches, bright cherries hidden like treasure. The cake required no frosting, though some housewives drizzled it with simple glaze or served it warm with whipped cream. One can of fruit cocktail cost just pennies, stretching into a cake that served a dozen people. This dessert appeared at potlucks, church suppers, and family dinners throughout the Christmas season. Fruit cocktail cake proved that convenience and homemade could coexist beautifully. Green bean casserole made with canned beans and canned soup became the vegetable dish that actually disappeared from serving bowls. 2 cans of green beans at 15 cents each were drained and mixed with 1 can of Campbell's cream of mushroom soup for 19 cents, topped with French's fried onions for 39 cents, creating a complete side for under $1. The casserole assembled in minutes, requiring no chopping beyond opening cans and stirring everything together in a baking dish. When it emerged from the oven, creamy mushroom sauce bubbled around tender beans, while fried onions turned crispy and golden. This made children actually eat vegetables without complaint, proof that canned ingredients could create something genuinely delicious. The recipe came from the back of the soup can, meaning every family made it exactly the same way, creating a shared experience across Thanksgiving tables nationwide. Spiced pear upside-down cake was the scent of autumn captured in a pan. Before the era of store-bought desserts, this fragrant cake offered something elegant but easy to make from scratch. Sliced pears were arranged in a layer of butter and brown sugar, topped with a batter spiced generously with cloves, cinnamon, and nutmeg. As it baked, the fruit caramelized, creating a glossy amber top that gleamed when flipped onto a plate. The smell alone could stop a conversation, a warm, spiced sweetness that wrapped itself around every memory of the season. Served warm, it was tender, moist, and quietly sophisticated, especially with a scoop of vanilla cream or a drizzle of caramel. It was the kind of dessert that felt homemade in the best way, humble but unforgettable. Long before pumpkin everything took over the holidays, spiced pear cake was the taste of November evenings spent under golden light and laughter. Date nut roll was the old-fashioned candy that combined chewy dates with crunchy walnuts in a log that sliced into pinwheel rounds. Mothers cooked sugar, milk, and butter to soft ball stage, then stirred in chopped dates that softened in the hot mixture. Walnuts were added along with vanilla before the candy was turned onto a damp towel and rolled into a log shape. Once cooled, the roll was sliced to reveal spirals of date-studded candy, each piece chewy, nutty, and intensely sweet. The candy had old-fashioned appeal, connecting Christmas to earlier generations, a recipe grandmothers passed down with pride. Children sometimes needed convincing to try it, but once they did, the unusual texture and flavor won converts. The candy kept well wrapped in waxed paper, ideal for holiday gifts. Date nut roll proved that Christmas candy didn't need chocolate to be beloved. Old spaghetti omelet transformed yesterday's dinner into a surprising lunch treat that delighted thrifty church cooks. Leftover spaghetti, often sauced lightly with tomato, was folded into beaten eggs, seasoned with black pepper and a touch of grated cheese, then poured into a hot skillet. As it cooked, the pasta strands settled into a golden crust while the eggs puffed gently around them. The omelet was flipped once to achieve a crisp exterior and a tender interior that sliced easily into wedges. Served at room temperature, it traveled well and stayed tasty even after hours on the picnic table. This dish reflected the inventive spirit of home cooks who refused to waste a single noodle and proved that a satisfying meal could come from simple leftovers. Children enjoyed the playful texture, while adults appreciated the hearty flavor that paired perfectly with fresh greens or sliced tomatoes from the church garden. It stood as a testament to resourcefulness and the belief that no blessing, however small, should ever be thrown away. Molded Waldorf salad was the elegant combination of apples, celery, walnuts, and mayonnaise suspended in shimmering gelatin that graced formal holiday tables. Classic Waldorf ingredients were folded into partially set lemon gelatin, poured into decorative molds, and chilled until firm. Unmolded onto lettuce, the salad held its shape beautifully while delivering familiar flavors in each quivering slice. The gelatin added visual appeal the original creamy version lacked, transforming simple fruit salad into something worthy of special occasions. Some versions added marshmallows for sweetness, while others kept the base true to origins. The dish could be made a day ahead, freeing time on busy Christmas morning. Molded Waldorf salad represented the era's fascination with gelatin as an ingredient that could elevate ordinary foods, turning the everyday into extraordinary. Waldorf salad made with apples, celery, and mayonnaise brought crunch and freshness to heavy Thanksgiving plates for less than 50 cents. 2 apples chopped into small cubes were mixed with diced celery, raisins, and chopped walnuts when budget allowed, all bound together with mayonnaise and lemon juice. The salad was assembled in the morning and refrigerated until dinner, allowing flavors to meld and apples to absorb creamy dressing. This wasn't a main dish, but it provided textural contrast that made rich foods more bearable, cutting through gravy and butter with crisp apple and tangy dressing. Children initially protested salad on Thanksgiving, but sweetness of apples and raisins usually won them over after a reluctant first bite. Mothers appreciated how the dish added color to the table and used up apples that were starting to soften but weren't bad enough to throw away. Mashed rutabagas with butter and cream were the humble stars of old-world kitchens, now almost vanished from modern tables. Their yellow flesh was dense and earthy, sweeter than turnips, but heartier than potatoes. When simmered and mashed with cream and butter, they turned velvety and golden, filling the air with a nutty aroma that spoke of tradition. This was a dish born from thrift, from the desire to make something rich out of what the land could easily give. It was popular across northern farms, where hearty vegetables kept families full through long winters. Every spoonful carried warmth and history, a link to a time when food was about sustenance and care. People today may pass them by in grocery stores, not realizing that once these humble roots sat proudly beside roast turkeys and hams. Mashed rutabagas were proof that even the simplest things, made with love, could be extraordinary. Tomato soup with grilled cheese was the rainy day classic that never failed to make kids feel warm from the inside out. The moment a storm cloud rolled in, kids would start hoping their mothers would make this exact combo because nothing else matched the feeling of dipping a buttery sandwich into a bowl of steaming soup. The soup usually came straight from a can, cheap and dependable, mixed with water or milk to make it smoother. As it heated, the rich tomato smell filled the room, promising comfort before you even took the first bite. Meanwhile, the grilled cheese sizzled in a pan, the bread crisping in butter until it turned that perfect shade of golden brown. When the cheese melted completely, stretching in strings when you pulled the sandwich apart, you knew dinner was going to be perfect. Kids could barely wait for the soup to cool down before dipping the sandwich into it, soaking up all that warmth and flavor in one bite. It was simple, cheap, and so easy that mothers could make it even on their most exhausted days. But it never felt tired or ordinary. It felt like kindness in a bowl. It tasted like being taken care of. Kids begged for this meal because it felt like a warm hug, the food equivalent of being wrapped in a blanket while the world outside stayed cold and gray. It was childhood comfort at its absolute best. Spiced crab apples were the garnish that elevated holiday platters from ordinary to elegant, their deep ruby color and clove-studded skins announcing celebration. Whole crab apples were simmered in sweetened vinegar syrup infused with cinnamon sticks, cloves, and allspice until they turned translucent and tender. The fruits were packed into jars with their spiced liquid and stored for weeks, improving as flavors concentrated. Come Christmas, they were arranged around roasts and hams like edible jewels, their glossy skins catching candlelight beautifully. The taste was intensely sweet-tart, with warming spice notes that complemented rich meats. Some families made their own from backyard trees, while others relied on store-bought versions. Children often avoided them, but adults treasured spiced crab apples as essential holiday tradition. The jars themselves became gifts, wrapped in ribbon for neighbors. Spiced crab apples represented the artistry of preservation, autumn's harvest transformed into winter's ornament. Deviled eggs, made from a dozen eggs at 49 cents, became the appetizer that disappeared before the turkey was even carved. Hard-boiled eggs were halved, the yolks mashed with mayonnaise, mustard, and paprika, then spooned back into white halves, creating perfect little bites. These weren't fancy deviled eggs with capers or garnishes, just simple combinations of yolk, mayo, and tang that tasted perfect and festive. Children would sneak them off the platter while mothers were busy with final preparations, earning scoldings but rarely actual consequences because everyone understood their appeal. The eggs provided protein that kept children satisfied while waiting for dinner, preventing meltdowns from hunger and anticipation. Mothers made extra because they knew half would disappear before the meal started, planning for this theft as part of holiday tradition. The paprika on top made them look special and colorful, transforming cheap eggs into something appropriate for celebration. Shoofly pie was a sticky slice of Pennsylvania Dutch genius, a dessert so rich and simple it practically defined comfort. Made with molasses, brown sugar, and a crumbly streusel topping, it filled kitchens with the warm, deep smell of caramel and spice. The name came from the flies drawn to its sweetness, but even that couldn't tarnish its charm. It baked into a glossy, syrupy center that wobbled like pudding under the crust. Families would serve it alongside coffee in the morning or as dessert after dinner, the sugar providing a little warmth against cold winters. Shoofly pie wasn't fancy. It didn't try to be, but it embodied everything good about home baking. Each bite was thick, chewy, and slightly smoky, tasting of the farms and hearths that created it. Though it has faded from many tables, one taste brings it all back. The slow afternoons, the laughter, and the smell of molasses thick in the air. Chocolate-covered cherries were the elegant confection that felt almost too fancy for home kitchens, yet mothers across America crafted them by the dozen each December. Maraschino cherries were drained and wrapped in fondant, a sweet, creamy mixture that would eventually liquefy inside the chocolate shell. Each wrapped cherry was dipped in tempered chocolate and set on waxed paper to harden. The magic happened over the following days as enzymes in the fondant converted sugar into liquid, creating that distinctive syrupy center. Children learned patience waiting for chocolate-covered cherries to properly ripen, knowing that fresh-dipped candies were too firm and needed time. The first bite through the chocolate shell released sweet cherry juice that mixed with creamy fondant. These candies appeared in fancy boxes at department stores, but homemade versions were fresher, with plumper cherries and thicker chocolate. Mothers took pride in creating something that looked store-bought but tasted infinitely better. Potato pancakes made from leftover mashed potatoes were the definition of turning almost nothing into something incredible. Mothers loved this recipe because it let them stretch every scrap and avoid waste, but kids loved it because those little golden patties tasted like a true treat. It started with a bowl of cold mashed potatoes, stiff and slightly lumpy from the night before. Mothers would mix in a little egg, a bit of flour, some onion if they had any left, and seasonings that were often more instinctual than measured. She would shape the mixture into small patties and drop them onto a hot, buttered skillet. The sound alone was enough to pull kids away from whatever they were doing. The edges browned first, creating that crispy ring that every child looked for before taking a bite. The inside stayed soft, creamy, and warm, almost like mashed potatoes in their coziest form. The contrast between the crisp exterior and the tender interior made every bite exciting. Some kids dipped them in ketchup, others ate them plain, but everyone agreed they were one of the best things to ever come out of a leftover bowl. Mothers appreciated that it cost nothing extra, but still felt like a real meal. Kids begged for them because they tasted like comfort made fresh again, like getting something new out of something old. They were the kind of food that made you forget you were eating leftovers because they were even better the second time around. Potato pancakes were a thrifty triumph, a childhood favorite, and a reminder that sometimes the best meals are the ones born out of necessity and a little creativity. Harvard Beets brought deep crimson elegance to holiday tables, their sweet and sour glaze glistening like rubies under dining room lights. The dish took its name from the university whose color it matched, though the connection ended there. Cooks sliced cooked beets into rounds, then simmered them in sauce of sugar, cornstarch, vinegar, and butter until the glaze thickened and coated each piece. The result was simultaneously sweet and tangy, earthiness balanced by bright acidity. Some recipes called for orange zest or cloves, adding complexity to the straightforward preparation. The vibrant color made Harvard Beets a visual dream, adding drama to tables dominated by browns and beiges. Children often resisted at first, but the sweet glaze converted many skeptics. This was practical cooking too, as canned beets worked perfectly fine when fresh ones were unavailable during winter. Harvard Beets represented an era when vegetables were dressed up for company, transformed from everyday nutrition into worthy holiday companions. Brown sugar-glazed ham was the true centerpiece of Thanksgiving before turkey took the crown. It was baked slowly, glazed repeatedly with a mix of brown sugar, mustard, and cloves until it shone like polished amber. The fat crisped, the sugar caramelized, and the smell filled the house with sweetness and spice. Slices were cut thick, each one tender and glossy, a mix of salty and sweet that lingered long after dinner ended. This was the dish that signaled celebration, the one families gathered around in quiet admiration. Its glaze stuck to your fingers, its flavor to your memory. Even when turkey became tradition, the old-timers still swore nothing could beat a good ham baked right. It was less about fashion, more about flavor, the kind that brings people back to the table year after year. Fantasy Fudge was the miracle recipe that appeared on marshmallow cream jars and made foolproof fudge accessible to every mother. The recipe combined sugar, butter, and evaporated milk with chocolate chips and marshmallow cream, eliminating the tricky temperature monitoring that traditional fudge required. Mothers boiled the sugar mixture for exactly 5 minutes, then stirred in the chips and cream until everything melted into glossy perfection. The result was smoother and creamier than old-fashioned fudge, with a texture that practically melted on the tongue. Children didn't care that this version was easier. They only knew it tasted incredible and appeared every Christmas. Poured into pans and cut into squares, Fantasy Fudge had the same satisfying density as traditional recipes, but with far less risk of failure. The recipe spread through communities during the 1970s, photocopied and shared between friends. Fantasy Fudge democratized candy making, proving that delicious homemade treats didn't require years of practice. Creamed corn over toast was the sweet, unexpectedly beloved meal that kids liked far more than they ever admitted. Mothers made it because canned corn was cheap, and a quick stovetop simmer with milk or butter created a creamy, comforting topping. Poured over warm toast, it soaked in just enough to soften the bread without making it soggy. Kids loved the sweetness, the warmth, and the way each bite felt like a kinder, gentler version of dinner. It was simple, soft, and soothing, perfect for days when appetites were unpredictable. Mothers appreciated that it required almost no ingredients and filled hungry stomachs quickly. Kids begged for it because it felt familiar and safe, like a meal meant just for them. Creamed corn over toast was one of those small, surprising favorites that only grew more nostalgic with time. 7-layer bars stacked sweetness upon sweetness in 1950s baking pans, creating a confection so rich that thin slices satisfied even demanding sweet tooths. Housewives pressed graham cracker crumbs into pan bottoms, then poured sweetened condensed milk over everything before layering chocolate chips, butterscotch chips, coconut, and walnuts in succession. The bars baked until coconut turned golden and edges bubbled with caramelized milk. Cutting them revealed distinct striations of flavor and texture, crunchy base, gooey middle, toasted top. Children argued over corner pieces where edges had turned extra crispy. The recipe required no mixing, no special skills, just layering and patience while the oven worked its magic. Ingredients were affordable. A single can of condensed milk stretched across an entire pan. These appeared on Christmas cookie platters, at bake sales, and in gift boxes throughout the holiday season. 7-layer bars represented the genius of 1950s convenience baking, producing impressive results from minimal effort. Apple butter spice cake was autumn itself in dessert form, rich and dark with the perfume of cinnamon and cloves. It was baked in simple pans, no frosting, no fuss, just a moist crumb and the deep sweetness of slow-cooked apple butter folded into the batter. The aroma filled the kitchen long before it was done, a warm mix of fruit, sugar, and spice that could stop you mid-sentence. Slices were often served plain, dusted with powdered sugar, or drizzled with cream for extra indulgence. This was the kind of cake that made families linger at the table, talking long after dessert plates were cleared. It felt old-fashioned, but in the best way, honest, homemade, and filled with care. Apple butter spice cake didn't just satisfy hunger, it soothed the heart, one nostalgic bite at a time. Marzipan fruits were the artistic candies that transformed almond paste into miniature apples, oranges, bananas, and pears, almost too beautiful to eat. Mothers kneaded almond paste with powdered sugar until smooth, then divided it into portions and tinted each with food coloring. Small pieces were shaped by hand into fruit forms, with toothpicks creating texture and cloves serving as stems. The finished fruits were sometimes brushed with egg white for shine or dusted with colored sugar for sparkle. Children were fascinated by how realistic the tiny fruits looked, lined up on plates like produce from a fairy tale market. Making marzipan required patience and artistic skill, each fruit taking several minutes to shape properly. The flavor was intensely almond, sweet, and slightly chewy with that distinctive paste texture. These candies appeared at fancy holiday parties and were given as special gifts to neighbors and friends. Marzipan fruits showed that candy making could be true artistry. Frito pie in its cafeteria style was the chaotic, crunchy, messy masterpiece that 1960s kids absolutely adored. It was not fancy or expensive, but it tasted like pure childhood joy. Corn chips formed the base, sometimes poured onto a plate, sometimes eaten straight from the bag. Hot chili or seasoned beef melted the chips just enough, and a shower of cheese glued the whole thing together. Kids loved the mix of textures: crispy edges, soft centers, savory meat, and gooey cheese. It felt fun and a little rebellious, like party food pretending to be dinner. Mothers loved how quick and cheap it was, perfect for busy nights. To kids, it tasted like loud cafeteria lunches, and after-school laughter. Frito pie was pure 1960s magic, unforgettable to anyone who grew up with it. Watergate salad appeared on holiday tables throughout the 1970s, its pale green color and mysterious origins making it a conversation piece at every gathering. Named after the scandal, though no one knew why, this dish combined instant pistachio pudding with crushed pineapple, miniature marshmallows, chopped pecans, and whipped topping folded into fluffy sweetness. Preparation took minutes, making it a favorite of busy hostesses needing impressive results without labor. The pistachio pudding gave it that distinctive mint green hue that looked festive against red tablecloths. Children adored its candy-like sweetness and surprise of crunchy nuts amid the creamy base. The dish straddled the line between salad and dessert, often appearing alongside savory dishes, though it could have ended any meal. Watergate salad represented the era's embrace of convenience products transformed into something special. Today, it survives mainly in church cookbooks and memories of those who grew up spooning seconds onto full plates. Cranberry apple cobbler was a bubbling masterpiece of simplicity, baked until the fruit burst through a golden crust in glossy streaks of red and gold. The tart cranberries melted into the sweet apples, creating a filling that tasted like fall itself. Bright, warm, and just a little wild. The topping, buttery and crisp, was spooned on in uneven dollops because perfection didn't matter, only flavor did. It came out of the oven hissing and fragrant, the kind of dessert you could hear before you even saw it. Families served it with a drizzle of cream or a scoop of vanilla ice cream, the cold meeting the hot in a perfect sigh. It wasn't fancy, but it was everything a holiday should be: humble, generous, and made to share. Every grandmother had her own version of it, some heavy with cinnamon and clove, others tart enough to wake you up. The smell would fill the house and drift onto the porch, a signal that dinner had found its ending. The first spoonful was always the hardest to take out, because the fruit bubbled and the crust cracked just right, releasing that sweet steam that made you forget the cold outside. Cobbler was more than dessert. It was gratitude you could taste, the final chapter of a meal that had already given you everything. Spiced pecans were the candied nuts that disappeared from bowls faster than mothers could refill them, their cinnamon sugar coating proving utterly irresistible. Egg whites were whisked with sugar, cinnamon, and salt, then tossed with pecan halves until every nut was coated. Spread on baking sheets and roasted until crisp and fragrant, the pecans emerged caramelized and delightfully crunchy. The spice blend varied by family. Some added nutmeg or allspice, others used cayenne for heat. Children would sneak handfuls, knowing holiday bowls of spiced pecans wouldn't last long. The nuts bridged the gap between candy and snack, appearing at parties where guests stood chatting. Making spiced pecans required no temperature monitoring or special skills, far simpler than most candies. Spiced pecans proved that nuts could be just as sweet and special as chocolate. Hamburger stew was the cozy simmering bowl that brought families together on chilly evenings. Mothers browned a bit of ground meat, then added potatoes, canned vegetables, and broth until everything blended into a rich, hearty mixture. It filled the kitchen with a deep, comforting smell that lingered for hours. Kids loved dipping bread into the broth, soaking every last bit. The stew was simple but full of flavor, warming from the inside out. Mothers made it because it stretched ingredients and fed everyone without effort. Kids begged for it because it felt like real homemade food, the kind that made the whole evening slower and softer. Hamburger stew was pure comfort in a bowl, made from almost nothing but tasting like everything a family needed. Buttermilk pancakes with cane syrup were Thanksgiving morning treats that made children feel special before the elaborate dinner. The pancakes were made from scratch using buttermilk that created tender, fluffy texture with slightly tangy flavor. Cane syrup, cheaper and more accessible than maple syrup in the South, was poured generously over stacks of golden cakes. This breakfast felt indulgent, even though the ingredients were basic pantry staples. Grandmothers made large batches, flipping pancakes on hot griddles while managing other tasks. The buttermilk's acidity reacted with baking soda, creating lightness that made each bite melt in the mouth. Children counted how many pancakes they ate, competing with siblings. Adults enjoyed them slowly, appreciating the care that went into making breakfast from scratch. Buttermilk pancakes with cane syrup represented balance between thrift and celebration. Mint cranberry orange bread was the kind of breakfast that tasted like a holiday morning before the gifts were even opened. The sharp burst of fresh cranberries met the bright sweetness of orange zest, filling the kitchen with a perfume of citrus and spice. Each slice was dense yet tender, the kind of loaf that begged for butter and a quiet moment by the window. Families baked it in advance for guests, wrapping it in wax paper and saving it for those slow, chilly mornings when coffee cups steamed and laughter came easy. The best batches had little bursts of tart fruit in every bite, softened by sugar and the warmth of the oven. For many, it wasn't just bread, it was memory, comfort, and color all baked together. Whether served for breakfast or tucked into a neighbor's basket, cranberry orange bread carried with it the simple joy of sharing. Panoche was the brown sugar fudge that Northeastern families considered essential to Christmas, its maple-like flavor distinguishing it from ordinary chocolate versions. Mothers cooked brown sugar, cream, and butter to soft ball stage, then beat in vanilla and sometimes chopped walnuts until the mixture turned creamy and thick. The brown sugar gave panoche a distinctive caramel undertone that was richer and more complex than white sugar could provide. Poured into pans and cut into squares, the fudge had a lighter color than chocolate but an equally satisfying texture. Children who grew up with panoche often preferred it to chocolate fudge, finding its flavor more interesting and less intense. The candy was particularly popular in areas where maple production made brown sugar flavors familiar and beloved. Panoche recipes were often closely guarded, with each family claiming their version was best. This fudge represented regional candy traditions that mothers preserved through generations of December kitchen work. Oven-baked potato wedges were the crispy, perfectly seasoned alternative to store-bought fries that kids loved even more. Mothers cut potatoes into thick wedges, tossed them with a little oil and seasoning, and let the oven work its magic. As they baked, the edges crisped while the center stayed soft and tender. Kids hovered near the oven window, waiting for that moment when the wedges turned golden brown. The smell alone promised something delicious. When served, they were hot, salty, and easy to dip in ketchup, making them irresistible. Mothers loved how affordable and healthy they were compared to anything from a diner kids begged for them because they tasted like real fries without the cost. Simple, crunchy, and comforting, these wedges were a quiet weeknight favorite in countless 1960s homes. Oyster stew warmed 1950s Christmas Eve tables as the traditional supper families ate before midnight church services. Fresh oysters were poached in butter and their own liquor, then combined with milk or cream heated until steaming. The stew was seasoned simply with salt and pepper, letting the briny sweetness shine. Oyster crackers floated on top, absorbing rich broth. Children approached the stew with suspicion, but many grew to love its distinctive flavor. The tradition traced back generations, connecting families to ancestors who considered oysters proper holiday fare. Oyster stew cost more than everyday meals, but remained affordable for annual tradition. Cherry lemon ribbon cake was sunshine layered in frosting. Bright pink and yellow stripes stacked high, each slice revealing cheerful colors that mirrored the optimism of the decade. The lemon layers were light and tangy, the cherry ones sweet and whimsical. Together they created a dessert that looked like happiness cut into squares. Whipped frosting covered the top, smooth as satin and often sprinkled with coconut flakes or candied cherries for flair. It was the kind of cake you saw in holiday cookbooks, a showpiece that looked fancier than it was. The secret was in the color. Food dye and imagination turned an ordinary cake mix into a holiday memory. It was baked for birthdays, Christmas dinners, and any occasion worth a little brightness. Each bite carried a taste of citrus and nostalgia, sweetened by the laughter of guests admiring its colors. Cherry lemon ribbon cake was a dessert of joy, lighthearted, eye-catching, and exactly what the 1970s loved most: fun made edible. Popcorn balls were the crunchy, sweet spheres that mothers shaped by hand every December, their sticky surfaces catching both popcorn and children's attention. Freshly popped corn was drizzled with hot sugar syrup flavored with vanilla or molasses, then quickly gathered and pressed into balls while still warm enough to hold together. The process required buttered hands and high heat tolerance, as the syrup needed to be hot enough to coat evenly. Once cooled, each ball was wrapped in waxed paper or cellophane tied with ribbon, ready for giving. Children loved the combination of salty popcorn and sweet coating, the way each ball crunched and stuck slightly to teeth. Some mothers tinted their syrup with food coloring, creating red and green balls for the holidays. Popcorn balls appeared at school parties, church gatherings, and on doorsteps as gifts for neighbors. They represented accessible candy making that families could do together. Anchovy and egg sandwich offered a bold coastal flavor that appealed to those who loved a briny bite. Finely chopped anchovies were blended with butter and mashed hard-cooked eggs, creating a creamy, salty spread that was both rich and nourishing. This hearty mixture found popularity in port cities and immigrant neighborhoods where tinned anchovies were inexpensive and plentiful families appreciated the protein boost during the lean war years, while diners enjoyed the unique taste that stood out among milder lunch offerings. A squeeze of lemon or a pinch of black pepper often rounded out the filling served on rye or crusty white bread. It provided a satisfying lunch that required no refrigeration and little effort. By the 1950s, changing tastes and a move towards sweeter, milder flavors pushed it aside. But the anchovy and egg sandwich still carries the memory of an era when bold ingredients and simple preparation came together to create something unforgettable and full of character. Stuffed celery appeared on 1950s Christmas relish trays as the crunchy appetizer that children ate by the fistful, despite claiming to hate vegetables. Crisp stalks were filled with softened cream cheese, sometimes mixed with pimento for adults. Plain cream cheese with paprika remained children's favorite. Housewives could stuff dozens of stalks in minutes. The celery provided crunch while cream cheese delivered richness. Some families added chopped nuts to their filling. Children who refused cooked vegetables devoured stuffed celery without complaint. This simple preparation became one of the most beloved holiday traditions. Candied carrots with orange glaze were the sunshine of the Thanksgiving table, a dish that glowed as brightly as the spirit of the day itself. Slender carrots, peeled and sliced, were simmered gently with butter, brown sugar, and a splash of orange juice until tender and glossy. As the syrup reduced, it coated every piece in a golden sheen, the fragrance of citrus and caramel drifting through the kitchen. Housewives of the 1940s and 1950s adored this recipe, not just for its beauty, but for the optimism it brought to the table. It symbolized better days after years of rationing and scarcity. The vibrant orange mirrored the era's fascination with color, abundance, and cheer. Served in sparkling glass bowls or Pyrex dishes, the carrots caught the light like jewels, a touch of brightness among the earthy tones of the feast. Children loved their sweetness. Adults appreciated their elegance. They offered a reminder that simple ingredients could still create wonder. As tastes grew more complex, this humble side faded from modern menus. But in its time, candied carrots with orange glaze represented hope, sweet, steady, and radiant, the kind of joy that came from turning the ordinary into something beautiful. Almond bark clusters were the simple candy that turned holiday snacking into an event, combining roasted almonds with smooth white or dark chocolate. Mothers melted chocolate carefully, stirred in whole roasted almonds, then dropped spoonfuls onto waxed paper to set. The clusters were irregular and rustic, each one slightly different in size and shape, which was part of their charm. Children loved helping make these, the process simple enough for small hands yet resulting in impressive candy. The combination of crunchy nuts and smooth chocolate created textural contrast that made each bite interesting. Some mothers used white chocolate with dried cranberries for holiday color, others stuck with dark chocolate and sea salt. Almond bark clusters kept well in cool places, perfect for gift tins. This candy proved that sometimes the simplest recipes created the most beloved results. Celery sticks filled with cream cheese became the vegetable that children would actually eat without being forced. Celery cost almost nothing, and an 8-ounce package of cream cheese for 35 cents could fill dozens of stalks. The celery was washed, trimmed, and cut into 3-inch pieces. Then the natural groove was filled with softened cream cheese. Some mothers added paprika on top for color, while others mixed the cream cheese with chopped olives or pimentos for adult versions. Children loved how they could pick up the celery with their fingers and eat it like breadsticks, making vegetables feel like finger food rather than forced nutrition. The cream cheese provided protein and fat that made the celery actually filling rather than just crunchy water. These appeared on relish trays alongside pickles and olives, adding freshness and color to the table while costing pennies. The combination represented clever marketing to children, disguising vegetables as treats. Apple potato rolls with honey butter were the quiet miracle that completed every Thanksgiving table. They were soft and golden, brushed with melted butter that made them glisten like treasure in the bread basket. The secret was mashed potatoes in the dough, giving each roll a pillowy texture that stayed tender for days. Fresh from the oven, they tore apart in warm, fragrant clouds, perfect for soaking up gravy or cradling leftover turkey the next day. The honey butter melted instantly, leaving a sweet gloss on your fingertips. In old cookbooks, they were always called company rolls, because no one saved this recipe for an ordinary day. Every family had its favorite version, kneaded by hand, proofed by instinct, and baked with care. They were more than bread. They were belonging made edible. You could tell when the rolls were ready by smell alone, a soft, buttery sweetness that crept through the house and drew everyone toward the kitchen. Grandmothers brushed them with melted butter one last time before serving, their hands practiced and gentle from years of tradition. Children fought over the last one, and parents always pretended to be polite before giving in. These rolls weren't just food. They were an heirloom, passed down in flour-dusted notebooks and muscle memory. Butterscotch Drops were the amber-colored candies that delivered rich, buttery sweetness in every slow-dissolving piece. Mothers cooked brown sugar, butter, and corn syrup together until the mixture reached hard crack stage, the butter creating a richness that plain sugar candy couldn't match. Dropped by spoonfuls onto greased baking sheets, each candy spread into a flat disc with slightly ruffled edges. The color ranged from pale gold to deep amber, depending on how long the sugar cooked, with darker candies carrying slightly caramelized, almost burnt notes. Children loved the way butterscotch melted slowly in their mouths, releasing waves of buttery flavor that seemed to last forever. Some mothers added a splash of vanilla or a pinch of salt to enhance the butterscotch taste. These candies were perfect for tucking into pockets and lunchboxes, hard enough to survive without melting or crumbling. Butterscotch Drops represented simple candy making at its finest, requiring only basic ingredients and careful temperature control. Carrot and raisin salad made with shredded carrots and mayonnaise brought sweetness and crunch to the table for about 40 cents total. 2 large carrots were peeled and shredded, then mixed with raisins, a squeeze of lemon juice, and enough mayonnaise to bind everything together into sweet, crunchy salad. Some families added crushed pineapple or chopped apples to increase volume and sweetness, making the salad more dessert-like. Children who refused cooked carrots would sometimes accept this version, seduced by raisins and creamy dressing that disguised the vegetable flavor. Mothers appreciated how the salad required no cooking and could be assembled early in the day, sitting safely in the refrigerator while other dishes demanded oven space and attention. The bright orange color added visual appeal to plates dominated by brown and beige, making meals look more balanced and abundant than they actually were. This was clever vegetable marketing disguised as sweet salad. Which lost recipe are you begging to taste one more time? Drop your favorite in the comments. Hit like and subscribe for more forgotten treasures from African American culinary history.